This is session 2 of God is with you. And God is with you when you're stuck. And you are never alone by Max Lucado. And he is speaking about the different, 3 different miracles. And specifically tonight he's looking at the miracles, the second, then the third miracles that we find in the Gospel of John. Dr. Lucado, he speaks about this idea of being stuck. When we think about stuck, we think about not moving, but really a stuck can mean a fork in the road, trying to make a decision, so we don't make a decision. Or it could be something as simple as thinking about like a stuck in the mud, or a flat tire, or whatever. I'm stuck. We can't move forward. But there's other things. I'm stuck at home, or I'm stuck in a hospital bed. I'm stuck in an endless job or dead-end job. I feel helpless. I feel hopeless. So perhaps you can relate with this idea of what he is teaching tonight about being stuck. Sometimes being stuck just simply means we don't know what action to take. We don't know what direction to take. Then there are other ways of being stuck. Sometimes we become stuck when we find ourselves comfortable in our stuckness. It's better just to be stuck than it is to be uncomfortable. And so today in our video this evening, we looked at 2 different miracles that John relates in the Gospel of John. And in each story, the recipient was stuck. One, we find this man. When I hear the story again about the man with his son who was dying, when we think about 18 miles, and he traveled from the first place in Canaan, that's where he had heard about the miracles of Jesus, and he traveled to Canaan from Capernaum, 18 miles, and to try to enlist Jesus, to try to get Jesus to go and to heal his son. And he wanted Jesus to go back immediately. And we know, as we've listened to the scripture tonight, and how that he felt. Can you imagine that journey back, knowing that Jesus wasn't coming yet? And so, but it's a great story and a great miracle and a great teaching. And then in the second miracle we studied was about the man at the pool of Bethesda. But this evening, as we examine these miracles by Jesus, we find the first one. I'll just give the verses in the scripture. The second miracle of Jesus that we find, of course, is John chapter 4, verses 46 through 54. And we know that this story takes place after Jesus had turned the wine into the water at Canaan. And in this miracle, the nobleman's son was sick at Capernaum, and he came to Canaan to Jesus to heal his son. And I think it's fascinating when you look at this miracle. One of the most fascinating part about this whole miracle and this whole story is where Jesus told him to go your way, and your son now lives. And what that teaches us is that we love this teaching. It says you are never alone. And Jesus did not have to even go physically to this place to heal this boy. And so what it teaches me is that even though God seems so far in distance, in a way from us, he is never too far to heal. He's never too far to perform a miracle. I think that that's a great teaching from this miracle. When we look at the end of that story and in the teaching, it says the man believed Jesus had healed his son, and his whole household also believed. So we look at this story, we see that the man was a believer, and not only was he a believer, but also was all of his household. The man was, if you think about it, the man was stuck. He wanted Jesus to go, or he could take Jesus at his word. He had a choice. I can trust Jesus, or I cannot trust Jesus. And so he did trust Jesus that he would heal this son. When we look at Scripture, we see, or often are asked to wait. Just to wait before we get unstuck. And our faith, when we think about this time of being in this place of waiting upon the Lord, this is often times where our faith is increased. It's increased during this waiting time, but also this increased faith helps us during this waiting time. I want you to think about that. This is time of waiting can be difficult. And really, reading Scripture can be helpful. And I do have a passage of Scripture in the 130th Psalm in verses 5 and 6 says, I wait for the Lord, my soul waits, and in His word I do hope. My soul waits for the Lord more than those who watch for the morning. Yes, more than those who watch for the morning. I believe that this waiting time is often the time when we can grow closest to the Lord. During this, then there was this second miracle that or the third miracle. It's the second one we discussed tonight. This third miracle, recorded by the Apostle John, is found in John chapter 5, and we know this story. This was the man that believed it was better to be stuck in a situation than to accept the change that would happen. 38 years he was set by that pool and laid by that pool. And I believe that surely over that time period, as you viewed in the film tonight or in the video tonight, that there was opportunities for him to be able to get into the pool. But this man had been stuck for some 38 years. And Jesus came, and he knew his heart. And he asked him, he says, do you want to be made well? He could have just went on and responded another way and said, do you want to be made well? Are you comfortable where you're at? And Jesus knew his heart. Was it easier to beg for a living than to work? Was it easier to be pitied and cared for by others than to take responsibility? The man responded and he said, I have no one to put me into the pool. Nonetheless, we know that Jesus healed the man. What we learn from this, this miracle is that sometimes when we do become unstuck, when we do finally make a decision, when we finally do make a choice, often there comes a change in our life. There has to be changes made. We often face new problems and new difficulties when we finally, as we say, get up and get going. When we finally make a decision, make a choice. It can be a fearful time. But that's really what this study is all about. We want to be unstuck. And that does cause some difficulty, that causes some fear, but we always need to remember we are never alone. Jesus is always with you. I'll leave you with these comments, and that is, are there areas in your own life where you feel stuck? Are you at a place in your life where you feel stuck that you can't make a decision? You can't decide which direction to go. You're not certain of what God's will is. Well, what we need to be doing is to pray for God's wisdom. Not our own wisdom, but pray for God's wisdom to know the answer. Perhaps there may be someone that's struggling with some change that's going to have to be made in their life. And we don't want to make that change. We're stuck. Pray for wisdom. Pray for an answer. Bring these concerns before God and seek His guidance, and then seek His direction and follow through with it in obedience once you do know the answer. Well, that is our study tonight. And next week, our study will be the third session. And the third session is God is with you in the storm. And in this one, we'll be looking at the miracle, the fourth miracle. And we'll be looking at John chapter 6 and verses 18 through 20. And then we'll also be looking at some other passages of Scripture. That's what I have tonight.